Hello everyone, Jennifer Maker here. It is a beautiful day to sew something together. So many of you have told me that you want to learn to sew or just sew more fun projects, and I have the perfect beginner sewing project for you today, a zipper pouch. It is super cute and it's lined inside and so much easier than you might think. Now, sewing on a zipper might sound intimidating, but I'm going to break it down into easy steps so you are sure to really understand how it's done and feel confident that you can do it, because you can. So come with me so I can show you how to make your very own zipper pouch. So let's take a look at what we need to make these lined zipper pouches. We've got everything out here. We start with our fabric, of course. This is where you can get creative and mix and match your patterns and colors and make something that's really unique to you. I'm using 100% cotton fabric. You can also use a blend, and I think a fat quarter works perfectly for this. We also need a zipper. The size of the zipper is really important here as it determines the width of your pouch. I'm using a 9-inch nylon coil zipper just like this one. I also recommend sheets of fusible interfacing, such as this heat and bond, to add some structure to your fabric. For thread, all-purpose sewing thread works great. And of course, we will need a sewing machine. I just love my Genome. It is great for beginners, as well as those who have more experience with sewing like me. I'm also going to use my Cricut cutting machine to cut out my fabric, along with a rotary blade, a Cricut washable fabric marker, and a pink fabric mat. This is optional, of course, but if you have a Cricut, why not use it? You'll also want a pair of fabric shears, some straight pins, a ruler, and an iron or a Cricut EasyPress. So let me show you where to find the free pattern for this zipper pouch, and then I'm going to show you how to cut and sew it all together. Step 1, get my easy zipper pouch pattern. Just go to my blog at jennifermaker.com/352 and look for libraries in the red bar at the top. Then either click Get a Password if you don't yet have one, or click Enter the library. You can find the designs by searching the page for design number 352, and then click it to download a zip file with SVG files for cutting on a Cricut or another cutting machine, DXF files, and printable PDF patterns for cutting by hand. I want to show you how to cut these designs on a Cricut cutting machine. If you want to cut your fabric by hand, just skip to step 2. First, upload the SVG cut file to Cricut Design Space. If you're unsure how to do this, please go to jennifermaker.com/svgs to learn how. Here's what my zipper pouch pattern files will look like in Cricut Design Space. You can zoom out to see both designs by clicking on the minus sign in the lower left corner. Step 2. Cut the zipper pouch pieces. First, we'll prepare our fabric for cutting. You will need 2 pieces of fabric to make my zipper pouch. 1 piece of fabric for the outside of the pouch, and the second piece of fabric for the inside liner of the pouch. If needed, iron each piece of your fabric using a household iron or an EasyPress set to 280 degrees. If you iron them, you won't have any wrinkles or creases, and that really helps with cutting and sewing. Plus, having a flat piece of fabric is important when we add the fusible interfacing later on. Heating the fusible interfacing to wrinkled fabric is likely to keep the wrinkles in the fabric. And keep in mind, different materials call for different heat settings. If you ever have a question about what heat settings you should use for your particular material, and you're using an EasyPress, you can find the Cricut heat setting guide by going to jennifermaker.com/easypress. Now cut each piece of fabric to 12 by 12 inches square. You will also need 2 pieces of fusible interfacing in the same dimensions. The fusible interfacing is used to give the fabric stability. To make sure that they are both the same size, lay a piece of your cut fabric on top of the fusible interfacing and cut around the edges of the fabric. Now it's time to fuse your interfacing to your fabric. Again, you can use a household iron set to the wool setting or a Cricut EasyPress set at 280 degrees Fahrenheit. Lay a piece of fabric on your pressing mat face down. Now, when I say the face of the fabric, I'm referring to the pretty printed side of the fabric. Place a piece of your fusible interfacing on top of the fabric. Make sure the rough side or the shiny side, depending on the fusible interfacing that you're using, is face down on the wrong side or back side of the fabric. The rough side of the fusible interfacing has adhesive that sticks to the fabric when heated. Using fusible interfacing on the fabric gives the fabric some firmness, which we want for our pouch. Make sure you've heated every area of the fabric at 280 degrees for 15 seconds. Now, after you've heated your fusible interfacing to the fabric, set it aside to cool. Heat the next piece of fusible interfacing to the fabric. When the fabric has cooled, check to ensure that the fusible interfacing is adhered to the fabric. If you see any areas lifting up, reheat that section. And flip the pieces over so the fabric is face up or pretty side up. And make sure there are no wrinkles in the fabric. Now I'm going to show you how to cut the fabric for these pouches on a Cricut cutting machine. If you prefer to cut by hand, just use the PDF pattern that I included in my zip file and cut out your fabric and then skip to step 3. I've created 2 different sized zipper pouches for you to choose from. The smaller zipper pouch measures 7.5 by 5 inches. The larger size measures 8.5 by 5 inches. If you don't want to make both sizes, you can hide the size you don't want by clicking the eye icon for that design in the Layers panel on the right side of the canvas. I'm going to make the large zipper pouch, so I'm hiding the small design here. To get our pattern ready to cut, we first need to change some of the layers to tell our machine to use the washable fabric marker. To do this, first click the design and select Ungroup above the Layers panel on the right side of your canvas. Now select the inner rectangle in both pieces and the skinny rectangle by holding Shift and clicking on all 3 of the layers in the Layers panel. You should have these 3 pieces selected. Under the Operation menu in the upper left side of your canvas, change Basic Cut to Pen from the drop-down menu. And directly to the right of the Operation menu is a square. This is used to select a color for our pen. Click the square and at the top of the menu, change it from Fine Point to Marker. Now scroll down and select the 3rd color, which should be the blue washable fabric. Your design should now show these objects colored in blue. Now we want to attach the pen layers to the 2 large rectangle pieces. With your mouse, click and drag to select the pen layers and the cut layer for one of the rectangle shapes. Now click Attach at the bottom of the Layers panel. Repeat this process for the other rectangle. You should now have 2 separate attach groups in your Layers panel on the right side. We are now ready to cut our fabric. Go ahead and click Make It in the upper right. If you're using a Maker 3 or Explorer 3 cutting machine, you'll be prompted to select how you want to load your materials for this project. Select On Mat and click Done. If you don't see this, don't worry about it. Now I have 2 mats, both of which call for a pen and a basic cut. Make sure that the pen lines are on the large rectangles and not off to the side or on a different mat. If they are, you'll need to go back and follow the directions that I gave you to attach them. When you're ready, click Continue in the lower right corner of the screen. Now we're going to select our material for the project. Click Browse All Materials on the right side of the Set Base Material menu. Type cotton in the search bar and then select cotton for your material and click Done. I always recommend selecting more pressure to ensure a nice clean cut. And if you're using the same type of fabric for the inside and outside of your zipper pouch, check the box next to Remember Material Settings so you won't be prompted to select your base material again after the first mat cuts. Now take your first piece of fabric and apply it to a pink FabricGrip machine mat. Apply the fabric pieces to the mat so the fusible interfacing is facing up. Use a brayer to help adhere the fabric to the mat. Now load your rotary blade into clamp B on the machine. Remove the cap on your washable fabric pen and insert that into clamp A. I like to put my cap back on my pen so I don't lose it. If you're cutting your fabric on an Explorer series machine, insert your fine point blade. Now, when the load and unload button begins to blink, insert your machine mat into the machine and press the flashing button to begin. When the cut is finished, unload the mat and carefully remove your fabric to prevent the edges from fraying. If you have any part of the fabric that didn't cut through, don't pull on the fabric to remove it, because this can cause a snag in your fabric. Instead, take your fabric shears and cut on the machine cutting line to release it. Now load your next piece of fabric with the fusible interfacing facing up again and continue the cut. Unload the mat and make sure to remove your pen from clamp A and replace the cap. I always store my pen cap side down to keep the ink from drying out. And remove the fabric just like we did with the first one. Step 3. Assemble the zipper pouch. Take your 2 pieces of fabric and place them on top of each other with the interfacing facing outward. So the pretty sides of your fabric should be facing each other, so they should be touching each other. Use straight pins on the long side of the fabric to piece them together. We are now going to sew around the rectangle in the center of the fabric. Do not sew on the lines in the middle of the fabric. Take your sewn fabric and use your fabric shears to cut down the center line and then cut to the corners. Do not cut through your stitch at the corners, but cut close to your stitch. Take one side of the fabric and flip it through the center that we just cut through so that the right sides of the fabric are now facing out. We are now going to press the fabric with an EasyPress Mini or a household iron or whatever you have so that we have nice seams around the center. Open one side of the 2 pieces of fabric and press the seam flat. Then fold the center seam so the right side of the fabric is facing out and press. Repeat to press the opposite side of the center. When you're finished, you will have 4 wonderful seams in the center, and the right side of your fabric will be facing out on both sides. Take your closed 9-inch zipper and place it under the center opening. If your zipper is not flat, iron it if necessary. You want your zipper centered and the zipper pulled to be up against the left side of the opening. Now get a straight pin and pin the fabric to the zipper in the middle. Add a second pin to the opposite side. Continue adding pins to the left and the right sides of the zipper. I also like to add a pin at each end. Return to your sewing machine and sew around the edge of the opening. I like to start in the middle. You want your stitch to be pretty close to the seam. My stitch is approximately 1/8 of an inch away from the seam. You don't want your stitch to be much further away because we're going to need to grab the zipper below. Now I want to point out that we're using a nylon zipper, which means you can sew right over it. If you're new to sewing zippers, you may not realize that it is perfectly okay to sew over a nylon zipper. Just take your time, you can do this. And for this reason, you do not want to use a metal zipper for this project. Nylon zippers only. Here is what the sewn-in zipper should look like. Now we will sew the outside fabric and the liner together. Turn your fabric over to make sure you have no stitches outside of the zipper tape. If you do, you'll want to use a seam ripper to remove the stitch and stitch again. Make sure the zipper is unzipped. We will pin the zipper back out of the way for this part. Take the 2 ends of your outer fabric and pin them together around the edges. The right side of the fabric will be facing in. Now take the 2 pieces of fabric for the lining and pin them together around the edges. For the fabric lining, make sure to leave an opening at the bottom almost as big as the width of your hand. We won't be sewing this part, so we can turn the fabric. Begin sewing the outer fabric around the edges on the washable fabric marker line. The seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. Next, sew the 2 sides of the fabric lining. Remember, we want to leave an opening at the bottom. When you have finished sewing both sides of the fabric, use your fabric shears to trim the corners of the outer fabric. We're clipping our corners like this to reduce the bulk of the fabric so the corners of our pouch will look nice and crisp. Trim off the sides and the bottom of the outer fabric. Trim the lining of the fabric the same way, but do not trim the bottom of the fabric. Reach through the opening of the lining and pull the fabric through so you have the right sides of the lining and the outer fabric facing out with the zipper in the middle. Use something pointy like a spatula tool, a chopstick, or a seam turning tool to form the seams and corners. Now use your household iron or EasyPress to press the sides and bottom of the outer fabric. Then press the bottom of the lining. Use your sewing machine to stitch the bottom of the lining. Stitch close to the edge of the fabric as we did with the zipper. I used a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance here. You can also stitch from one end of the fabric bottom to the other. Push the lining of your zipper pouch so it is inside the outer fabric. And again, you can use a spatula tool, a chopstick, or a seam turning tool to form the corners on each side of the zipper. Now just press your zipper pouch if necessary, and here's what my finished pouches look like. These zipper pouches are great for so many things. Use them to hold pens and pencils, cosmetics, toiletries, chargers, AirPods, and so much more. Or why not use them as a mini purse inside your bigger purse to hold your keys, phone, or wallet? Great idea, huh? You can even make some as gifts and add personalization with iron-on vinyl. If you have any questions about making a zipper pouch that I haven't answered in this video, please leave your question below this video or ask over at our Cricut Crafters group at jennifermaker.com/CricutCrafters. I love to help. And that's it for today. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.